This episode of the Alter Braintrust is with our guest, Catherine Farquharson. And Catherine is a, lifelong friend of Hope's. So get ready for some real juicy vibes, very authentic conversation. These two know each other for many, many years. And it was fun for me to be in the mix of that and kind of dive deeper between all things coaching and coaching business and industry, as well as understanding what's the essence of coaching. And it is care, a little spoiler here, and caring and nurturing into a more beautiful world, as well as, just peeling back the layers. I think there was a tear shed at some point in this episode, and it just felt very real for me. I enjoyed it. Hope, how did you like to talk to your longtime friend there?
It was surprising. I haven't seen that side of her, and it was really fascinating to be in a triad with you and her. You haven't met her, so you got to ask questions that maybe were on the tip of my tongue, but I had never asked her. Some really honest questions, as Julian knows how to ask them directly. And Catherine, I could tell, was so appreciative of your realness and of our chemistry, the three of us. This one was definitely one of my favorites, and you're going to enjoy all the nuances, the emotions, and Catherine is a wise soul. We are breaking the rules of business as usual. Join this exclusive Alter Braintrust series with Hope and Julian.
It's called Breaking the Rules of Business as Usual. And it's all about how we break the rules, how we elevate with each other, and how we shed masks, how we let go of what was maybe, the usual. I would even say, as we're going into 2024, usual is out the window. We need a new operating system for being human, from living from the heart, leading from the heart, making coherent sense with each other. And so it's an honor and fun to be here with the three of us, Hope, Catherine. My name is Julian, so let's get this conversation going. I know you two know each other since childhood. I'm new to the constellation, but sometimes those long memories can really set us up for an amazing and deep conversation.
Yeah, I have been so looking forward to diving into conversation with you, Catherine. And really watching your beautiful journey over the years. We've known each other since we were 11, and every once in a while we come back into each other's lives. But I have to say, I'm always paying attention, and your energy is always radiating outwards. I wanted to begin with a question. I love words. I don't know if you know that about me, but I really love words. I like to play with them. I do find there's certain jargony words that are floating around in the world, as we know. I actually made up a recipe that I call jargonese. When there's too many jargony words, I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of jargonese on that. There's
so
a jargony
good.
word. It kind of has this like smear on it a little bit. And there is a word that is used a lot nowadays, and it's actually woven into how all three of us would describe or could describe our work. And that word is coach. And I don't know, I find the word coach has gotten quite jargonese. But I wanted to ask you, Catherine, what does the word coach mean to you? Maybe there's a more apt word that you feel into that you're like, yeah, yes, I am a coach. And so I'm curious to start there. What does that word mean for you?
Excuse me. I love this conversation already because this is right up my alley. I actually am having like an ab reaction to the word coach lately. So I completely agree with you. And I also do the best that I can to avoid using jargonese when I am speaking about things. So I love that you just gave me that new word. There are certain words that you will never hear me say, or if you do, it's like with great intention. And so coach has been something that I have been exploring because I don't actually feel in resonance with it the way that I used to. So what the word, I would say, means to me, if I were to look, historically, would be like sports coach. Like that's our first association with that word. So it's like the cheer. I'm here. I'm cheering you on. Like you got this. You can do that, which is a big part of what I do. So I think that um, uh, encapsulates it. But I feel the way that it's turned into jargon now is not what's resonating. And um, I think it is the embedded definition inside that I know something that you don't know. And I think that we are shifting into a different way. Like I love everything about what these conversations are about because we're shifting into a different time of business and also a different way of operating. And I don't know if I'm your coach. Like I don't know more than you. I don't have answers that you don't have. So I find that I just don't really gravitate to that words as much as maybe like mentor. I've been enjoying mentor a lot more. Um, but it's tough because like what is the word that fills that space? Yeah, what have you found?
Yeah, I think Julian and I were talking about this yesterday or the day before, and we both were describing our work using the term or word midwife. You
Oh,
use
I
doula
just
or like
thought of that word. That's so funny.
birthing, being
Yes.
there as a energetic, loving guide or support as people move through their birth that they've been designed to do. Their
Yeah.
bodies, their souls, their energy has been designed for this work. And having a midwife there you trust, that you have a great amount of connection with, really helps the birth to be easier, right? I mean, it really, I guess I'm the person who has had two babies, but with midwives, and I'm like,
You
what
know.
an honorable word for me. What about you, Julian?
Well, I can't quite explain how it would feel like I'd have children or birth children, but I definitely do like this idea of like assisting the creative birth. And I think there's something, I've struggled with the word coach, and then for a long time I've just accepted it, because there's something about understanding that language it's an interrelating around language. So for some people, that word makes sense. And so if it makes sense, if it is easy to digest it, use it, right? Personally, I feel much more resonant with the word guide or midwife or, the part of the becoming part of the human being journey. I think, when we think of human being, it's the human, the physical vessel, the doing part, and it's the being, which is maybe the spirit or the soul and the more esoteric or spiritual side of ourselves. But then also the present moment is, yes, everything, but also fleeting. We always know as a human with this perception of time we have that we're actually at all times in a process of becoming, right? And so in that becoming process, I think humans need each other. And so it's just kind of logical to me that in this becoming process, we would invite different guides, different mentors, different coaches into our life. We do this in sports, we do this in high performance music and high performance business, and it's become a normal thing. But I think it's actually just part of life to have mentors and guides. And, this is kind of part of breaking the rules to me already, because I think playing business at, a leading edge of where heart meets mind and heart mind kind of coherence. It's also about understanding that, in this process of becoming, we don't need to know each other's answers. Catherine, you said this. This is the first thing I say to all of my clients. Like, I won't know your answers, but I can help you find them inside yourself, right? And so there's something there. I think a lot of people tuning into this series, if you're a coach or if you have been coached, if you're struggling or wrangling with that word, I kind of relating to this part of our experience. And this is kind of where I want to take the next question to you, Catherine. I think it has a lot to do with how business is changing, and that fundamentally we live in a linear world of business where everything is reduced to finance. But coaching or guidance or mentorship has a frequency of care in it, right? So really we're evolving, possibly, I'm making that hypothesis, we're evolving into an economy of caring where, sure, there's a financial exchange and, that's a whole other part of it. But the caring part is how we guide each other into who we are becoming together, right? How do you relate with that? And where do you kind of land with your own approach on that? Because, I've read up on you and I don't know you since we're 11, but there's an intuitive part to you, there's a casual part to you, there's a linguistics part to you. How do you relate to this idea of the economy of care that we're kind of all birthing together?
I am feeling like almost, this is how I'm relating to this. I'm feeling almost emotional hearing you talk about this because I haven't been having this conversation with people, but I've been journaling about it. And to hear you say back exactly how I'm feeling feels like reassuring and hopeful and also affirmative to me. So I want to say thank you for what you're saying, and I think that you are putting words to what people like myself and others um, are intuiting, that this is happening and this is what people are really desiring. And I'll share that from my own personal experience. Right now, I'm actually at the tail end of a long like reinvention that I've been going through, and it's actually been because of this exactly. So I started with my business in business. Like I was actually a photographer before, so I was helping photographers in their business. And then I moved to creative entrepreneurs. Then I moved to slowly went to women, and it was following what I can see now as the quite like what you're describing is very linear and just very specific definitions for what success means. And now with this economy of caring, I'm really focusing on, yes, the monetary part is important, absolutely, but that there are other metrics for success that are beyond those things. Because what we know is that just having the monetary success isn't going to be what brings you the fulfillment in life. And but it's what we determine as success in the mainstream. And so what I'm finding is there's a lot of people who are not actually present for their lives, or they're not really enjoying them, or they don't really know who they are, and beyond these external validations and affirmations and things. And so I think that there's like a deep desire for those things to be answered and supported, and like it's like evolutionary. So that's how I resonate with what you're saying deeply.
And I'm noticing that, I mean, you always have a measure of care in all that you do. I do notice you may be journaling and thinking it's not coming out in very articulated conversations, but I notice an amping up of your level of care. I wonder how that's coming out to the people you're working with. Is it coming out in a shift in the way that you're doing your work, your coaching, your business? Or is it more of a deeper insight?
It's actually not different in my world. So I've always, these are my core values. So it's this care has been how I have cared for my clients, and why some of them stay for like years. I care deeply about my clients. And I think what you might be seeing is the way that because it's such a part of me, it never occurred to me that it was a part of me to share or like talk about, because it was just embedded in my business, where now I am shifting it as that this is something that we're actually talking about, so that I can help other people be able to access these parts of themselves, where before I would say it was like almost more in my service, I think. I mean, but that's generally the feedback that I've got.
You're making it more explicit.
More
in
explicit.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe more generous with it. Like, it's like, when you're in my world, you'll get this care, where now I'm more generous. We're like, you don't need to be a client for you to get this care.
Okay. That is what I'm feeling. I am
Yeah.
feeling it in a
Yeah.
beautiful way.
I think this is
And
part of the actual revolution, right? That's why we're talking about it in the context of breaking the rules of business as usual. Is um, there is a revolution undergo, and that revolution has a lot to do with moving from a linearly led reality, on linear in the sense of power or dominion over nature, dominion over others, linear also in the sense of finance, into maybe a multilateral world, or at least a world where we have different levels and tiers of what matters. You just mentioned values, and I think it's both moralistic as well as just logical, that if we were to pursue this linear world, it would just lead to destruction of the ecosystems and each other, right? It's very visible. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole in this conversation today, but so how do we get from here to another kind of world? And I think, again, almost logical, it's through people that just feel that really deeply, that this is their mission, right? And sometimes this can sound a bit fluff or esoteric. I think those times have already changed, to be honest. Like 10 years ago, they sounded much more fluff and esoteric. But I'm curious, how the two of you see this. Hope just as much you as Catherine as you. Where was that change in your journey where you understood, I'm going to own this part? Like, I'm done with pretending that I should do business this way, or maybe you both were just like really clear on that from the beginning, but I've definitely gone through this where I've realized this way of doing things differently isn't the usual. So I'm actually kind of swimming upstream for a bit. And at this point, it feels like, no, I'm actually in this raging downstream river where everyone around me just kind of comes into my field because of this care, that frequency, that we're in this together, and I hope we say this, like, I'm in your corner kind of language. Where was that moment for the two of you? Catherine, yeah, go ahead.
I'll start just to say that I think for me, the image of what I thought I had to present like to have a successful business got really tiring.
Yeah.
And I just got worn out.
Yeah.
And I definitely always have had this authenticity component to me, just because that's just how I am. Like, that, my casual nature is how I've always been. But before that casual nature, I would look at as a problem. So I'd be like, oh, if I was more articulate, or if I just, clean this up a little bit or present it in a little, I was still thinking that was a mistake. And now, and then I came to a place where I realized, no, that's actually the strength. That's not the mistake. And so that was the main thing for me, is like, I was using other people in the industry as like markers of what it should look like, for what success means, and not actually using my own guidance system of, wait, hold on, how many clients do I want? Because it's all about scaling. I'm like, but wait, is that for me? Do I want that? Like, what do I actually want? So turning it back around, and shedding all of the ideas that I had of what it should look like freed me up. I think that was the turning point for me. What about you, Hope?
The shoulds, I relate so much to a lot of what you're talking about, especially around having a few sides, our parts, that some parts are sort of less presentable, or maybe not what everybody needs to see. Maybe they're kind of out of order, or not the good girl, or, I mean, there's so many labels. I do have to say, I have been trying to break free of shoulds for most of my life, but every once in a while they suck me back in, and I will then be like on the horse of should for a while, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, what am I doing? Like, what do you want, Hopi?
It's a powerful energy that sucks you in.
It really is. I'm saying that powerful energy no matter how strong your inner guidance is, I'm saying it for others who might have that pull. It's like a gravitational pull that if you have a certain number of people in your orbit that are on that should horse as well, you start to think, am I crazy for speaking differently, doing things differently, doing me in my way? And I would say in my 40s was a time that I really have gotten off that should horse systematically in the way that I build my lifestyle, work, or collaborate with people on work, how I lead my family life, how I lead my love and friendships. Like it's a constant coming back to the Hopi compass and how I want to show up in the world. And I look forward to seeing me like get even more quirky and more hope, as I reach into my older years. So yeah,
The world
She's
needs
still in her
more hope.
40s, by the way, everyone. She's talking like she's ancient, and she's like, she even referred to her 40s in past tense. You're only halfway. Those 40s.
those 40s.
Can't wait to get there, ladies. Can't wait to get there. Wait, but Hope, you said in your 40s. It sounds like that's an autobiographical way of speaking about it, because I don't know where we're going to edit this in, but we already hit record, but we didn't really quite get started. And you two were talking about back in 2001 in Laos when you were owning your own bar in like super renegade random life move, Wasn't that authentic Hope just as much? Trying to shake off and shake free from what she should do?
100%. I was off the should horse when I was living in Southeast Asia and then in Bangkok. And then when I came back to Canada, I looked around and everyone was like, what have you been doing? You haven't gotten a house? Where are you? Where's your insurance? When are you going to have kids? And then so I found myself like slipping back onto that saddle again and be like, oh, I guess I better get on this horse again. So yes, it was hopping on and off for a while.
Well, I think that's why it matters so much to talk about it, and to like continuously allow this to be the anchor of this series as well. Is like, you listening, asking yourself, should I get that insurance, that mortgage, that house, and follow what everyone else is saying, or should I really actually just listen to what my intuition says? If meditate 30 minutes and after that I'm like, no, I actually want to fly to Laos or Tulum or wherever it might be. Well, there's a good chance that there's a balance of it. No, jump in, Catherine. I know you're going to say something.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Drive it home.
I
love when you interrupt. Please interrupt.
Oh, I'm like waiting. The good girl. No, I was just thinking like that's a really interesting point about coming back to Canada and getting pulled in. And I agree with you, Julian, that it's so important to like. It's actually, I'm going to argue, it's more important to be able to ask those questions when you're in an environment that does not show any like examples in your face of alternate ways of thinking. And so often, like frequently I'll, fantasize like, oh, I could just get out of here, like move to Costa Rica or like go to Bali or, like live that other life. And every time I come back and I think, no, because if anyone who's thinking that way always leaves, then like who's here for the people who are here? And I this is maybe my own like justification of why I stay, but I think that there's something about being someone who is thinking and leading in this other way and living in the place that is more conventional, and it doesn't have a lot of examples. I mean, there are more. I agree with you also, Julian, that I think, times have shifted dramatically. So I'm speaking in wild generalizations. But it's something that I explore for myself of like, where can I be of most service?
I think of you as having, you just shared you come back to your compass all the time. I know you have such a powerful journaling practice. One of the pulses I have my finger on in my work, in the world, is a feeling that there are many humans who feel a sense of overwhelm in the world. Like there is so much change. there are systems shifting, there are things evolving, there are wars happening. There's just a lot of things taxing their systems. And Julian, speaking of words, has a beautiful term called well-whelmed instead of overwhelmed. And we were talking about habits and rituals that like bring us a sense of well-whelmedness. I know you have your journaling practice, and I know that you have other beautiful habits and rituals. I wonder if you could share any with listeners and with us that you just can't live without to keep you having a sense of well-whelmed in the world.
Well, I do have the journaling practice. But what I wanted to say about the journaling practice that helps me in that area specifically is I use it a lot for perspective and perception. So I'll take whatever it is that I think that I am seeing in a certain way, and then I journal in a to be able to explore different ways of seeing it so that nothing that I think is a fact. And I think that overwhelm can come from the stacking of perceptions that are deemed as like they're rigid, and they're deemed as, and therefore they weigh on us. They stack up and then they weigh on us. So the journaling is specifically effective in this area for loosening the way that I'm looking at something so that I can find some peace to come through it. So that's how I use that in to be well whelmed. I love that. And then I also will use meditation, either guided or silent, and um, just spend the time in the morning with quiet, with contemplation. And so I have a pretty long and luscious morning routine for that reason, that I really feel like if there's more overwhelm going on, I need to counter it in time in the morning for me to feel like, no, there's no overwhelm because I've got so much spacious time. So sometimes I'll get up really early just to gift myself that counter experience. And then I also will practice different types of breath work or embodiment, depending if I want to do like a feminine practice or an uplifting breath work practice or invigorating kind of thing. So it depends on what I've got going on in my body, choosing what will be the right thing to help my state. Yeah.
You have a large toolkit. I know you
I have a
do.
very large toolkit.
And you're always, I feel like you're very collaborative in your work, in that you work with other mentors, guides, always adding to your toolkit. How does that work for you? Do you sort of look ahead in the year and think, okay, I am really going to work on these things, or I'm going to add to my toolkit, or like, how does that emerge in your life or take place in your development?
I actually will choose a lot of what I'm going to learn based on the teacher.
Hmm.
So, going back to Julian's point about the guide, like who do I want to be guiding me? Is even before I'll do a meditation, like how do I feel about this person's voice inside of me? Like, do you guys do
Right.
this?
Yes.
Like really like caring about who is delivering the message, not just the message.
Yeah, it's who, not how. Yeah,
So
for sure. In all
sometimes
the
some
aspects of who, not how. It's always about the people, right? Like, because that's the relationship we're actually fostering. Like, life is relational, and I think we can't overstate that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that when people are in the old way, we'll call it, of operating, they're just trying to get the thing. I just need to learn the thing, and they're not really caring about who they're learning it from. So they might be like making their decision based on price or accessibility, like whether they're nearby. And I really do it based on the teachers. So that for me, that looks like um, like, how do I intuitively feel about their wisdom, their level of awareness? Like, how do they live in conjunction with how they say they live? You know, like who are they as the being that then I would I want to learn from them? And so I have a few teachers who I just study with for years. So it's not actually like they move on to things and I move on to things with them. Like this now. Like that's literally what I'll do because I want to they know me and I know them and it feels like a real relationship. So it's not like I'm signing up for a course for 30 days and then thanks so much. Bye. Um so
You're
sometimes
investing
it'll
in
be
bonds.
Hmm?
You're investing in bonds.
I'm investing in bonds. Yes.
Different kind of bonds, right? But so this
That's
is kind of
right.
where the word well-whelmed comes in, right? So there's underwhelmed, there's overwhelmed. Those are actual words, right? We all know what they mean. But then well-whelmed is somewhere in the middle, where it's like just enough comfort zone, so I know I can be safe, maybe, but just enough kind of stretch where I realize, well, real life isn't safe, so I'm here in real life right now. And coming back to the title of the series, breaking the rules of business as usual. Catherine, you have this language in what you offer that's a life with no limits. I'd love to kind of demystify that a little bit more, because no limits to me sounds both like super exciting as well as like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for me?
Yeah.
What could that mean, right? So do you mind guiding us a bit more into the like well-whelmed state of no limits?
Yeah. Love that. Um, so the the limitless component is, and it's interesting to hear you saying it back. So I'm like, oh, that is interesting because there is something maybe not settling about the idea that there's no limit to something, because we do like by nature containment. So it's not necessarily an invitation that everyone would like. But the reason that I have it phrased that way is because we're so programmed to make our decisions based on what we know and from the past that we feel like we have limits. And so like when we think about how we think about our future or our lives, for example, we'll be like, yes, 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 I can have that. Yes, yes, yes. And then there hits some point in your own mind where you're like, I can't go past that. I like to use like money as an example of this, just because everyone has a cap of like, here's my earning potential, I can't go past this, or like I can imagine it a little higher, and then it's like, and after that I explode. like brain hold that idea. And so the idea of life without limits like is actually just the idea of like, what if I just took that lid off that we put on ourselves? What if that wasn't there? So it just helps to open up that what if question of like, well, and it helps to see, oh my gosh, I am making that up myself. Like, this is not me talking. This is my parents talking. This isn't me talking. This is like just because I haven't had this exposure yet, not necessarily because it's true or a fact. So,
And when you take that lid off, often there can be a huge wall or another wall or terror or fear that's floating around. You've taken the ceiling off, and then the fear and the terror, you're confronted with it. And I wonder how you guide or mentor people through that fundamental fear of the unknown. They've always had that limit, they've always had that ceiling. You take it off and it's no longer there. Oh shit, now what?
yeah. Well, I always say like you can touch it, but only so quickly, because it does transfer into fear or doubt or quickly afterwards. So it's like we can, like, I always say to like go there until you can touch it and then leave. Like, don't try to linger there, because you can't really linger there, because like you say, it's unknown. So but this is a big part of the daily practice, just going, because well-whelmed, I think also to me is this balance between the flow and being able to dance in the unknown, and also the structure and the discipline that's like that we need to trust and feel grounded ourselves. And so this would be where, that, say, for example, the daily practice of imagining and feeling that future with, let's say, that income, say, we'll just stick with that example, it starts to normalize over time. And so what seems an outrageous thing for you to imagine one day slowly is normal. And then you start to be like, I actually believe that this is possible for me. And then that's where things start to change, because it becomes an imagination thing and more of a belief system thing. And so, but it can't just be done on one. Well, it can through other methodologies, but like generally through like the repetition of our own, allowing ourselves to dance in that area a little bit every day shifts the, the bigger piece.
I wonder if you have any stories. It could be a story about you or a story about a beloved client that you've worked with, and in helping them to see what's possible for their life or experience what's possible for their life in working with you, or you doing it for your own life. I'd love if you could pull up some from the archive.
I have so many examples, because it's actually it is the human experience of thinking, like, I mean, I didn't think that I could, like, we start off thinking we can't, like, it's just like either consciously or unconsciously. So, but what will happen, just, I will share a story, but what I just want to say that what will often happen, which I think you will find interesting, is that often, because it happens slowly over time of intentionality every day, every day, every day, frequently, it's me that says to that person, hey, do you see where you are right now? Do you remember what you said? Like, I end up being the time capsule. Because it becomes who you are and it becomes your reality, that sometimes they forget to notice. And they'll be like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I'm literally living in my past dream. I forgot to notice in this moment. So that's also very, very common. So we're mirrors. We're midwives and then mirrors. So an example. Oh, okay. So I just had a reflection client of mine last week. She sent me a message, and she started working with me in 2021, and she left her corporate job, and she was in the travel industry. And so her dream was to create a business for the travel industry and to move to Barcelona and to like and to be a public speaker. So it was like over time she started like stacking these things. So they were like pretty lofty. They were all in each of themselves of significant dream. So to be invited to speak, to have this thriving business with a certain amount of revenue, and then to be living in Barcelona. So I watched these things sort of happen over time. And then last week she sent me this message from Barcelona, living her best life, that her business has just won these awards, and that she's going to Geneva or somewhere to like do this public speaking event. And she was a good example of someone who like forgets to remember because she normalized to it. But in that moment, she was like, this is everything I said that I wanted. Like, we literally, like, you ran us through this visualization. This was everything I visualized. I had nothing, like, no, like, she still had her old corporate mentality of like, because people who have corporate jobs think differently than entrepreneurs. And so she had to like undo all of that thinking and learn how to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And then now she's doing all of those things. And it's not like it didn't have ups and downs. And that's one of the things that I think is so important when people are living out these things, is that it's easy to hear a story like this and think like, wow, like what did she have that I don't have? And like, what I'll tell you is she had a roller coaster, right? It wasn't like all of a sudden, and especially building a business, there's ups and downs and all the things you don't know because you've never done it before. And we all know this, but I always think it's really important to say, because it's easy for like testimonial stories to sound like it's just like there wasn't any suffering on the way, and there was. But the beautiful thing is that she's like letting herself enjoy it now. She's like, she's like, I can't believe this is my life. And I think that that's a really important part to add in, is the like appreciation of what that kind of um, chance taking looks like.
I love that story. And I also appreciate you revealing and sharing the roller coaster. I often call it failure tolerance with my clients. Like I even like imagine them building this muscle of failure tolerance as they move up and down, but they're still have their vision set on taking action to those goals or that picture ideal in their mind. And failure is going to happen, and it will help to reinforce what's working and what's not. But that's not a reflection of them, which is a beautiful aspect in witnessing someone else's growth. Speaking of mirrors, like when you witness someone not take the failures or the missteps in that particular tactic or action as a reflection of them internally, for me, I don't know about you guys, but that feels so powerful.
I think that's the number one thing. I know that's the number one thing that my clients cross over on, is that and I think especially when you're starting a business, it's natural for that to be the case, right? To think that the results are a direct reflection of your own worth, and to separate those things. So I 100% agree. Yeah.
How about you, Julian?
Well, I'm curious, we're speaking about clients and client journeys. I'm kind of curious about your journey at this point right now, where that moment happened or where that moment keeps happening. And another way to kind of go into, what I'm kind of feeling into, intuiting into, and like desiring to learn in this conversation with you both is, it's one thing to say we create our own reality, but then it's really another thing to actively like carve it, mold something into, this future kind of piece of art, right? What I mean with that is sometimes people have, and in the story you shared, this could be a true, real desire. It's like, I want to be a public speaker. But I feel just like we think of business success, like, well, I have to scale, well, I have to build it bigger, well, it has to be this, and I should have that. Is like, where is that coming from? Like, that's like a nagging energy on us. I don't think that's actually necessarily coming from me when I have those thoughts, right? And so a lot of my practice is about getting me back to just understanding, is this really from my heart? Am I carrying an idea that is truly connected to me, my essence and my ability? Or is this another picture of a picture, an image that's placed there by, I don't know, the Wi-Fi frequency or the dude across the road or TV or whatever it may be, right? And so I'm just really curious about that specific part of the process in our own lives and our clients' lives of understanding, well, that is what limitless feels to me. And that is what I actually desire. And I'm well-whelmed in this space where I have, I don't know, like a personal example. I'm wellest whelmed when I have at least 2 days off a week, because I just want to do nothing for 2 days a week. It's like a form of reward or currency that allows me to have different kinds of relationships and take care of other people or have phone calls that are not about money at all. And, so I didn't know this 10 years ago. No one told me about this. But at some point I realized when I make that a priority, everything else starts to work. So I'm just really curious about that, like not consuming a future reality, but like really understanding there's a self-sourced understanding of who I am in relation with everyone else around. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I'm curious to just get a level deeper there.
Am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll share from my own experience, because I can relate to what you're talking about a lot, which is um, I started off my coaching business doing one-on-one coaching. And then I had these clients who I felt like I really wanted them to know each other because they were all so amazing and they felt like their journeys were so independent because they were like in isolation. So I'm like, I'm going to start a group coaching program. And at that time, I had a coach and she had started a group coaching program. And so I was like, oh, well, what's she doing? And so she was running a program that was someone else's. And so I signed up to be a consultant. I steps because I was like, it's working for her, it'll work for me. And so I signed up to be a facilitator of that same program. And that's how I began my coaching program, my group coaching program. And so from 2017 to 2021, I was using that program as my foundation and then riffing and adding in my own stuff as I evolved. And eventually I was like, well, I'm not even really using that program anymore. I'll just carry on. So for me, that was a huge part of what you're talking about, where I was like, I was using someone else's actual step-by-step process. Here's how you hit success. Follow these lessons. This will bring you XYZ. And it worked in how we're talking about it here. Like she hit those goals with that exact program. And inside of me, I was then having these pulls for like the other things that I was talking about. And I was like, wait a minute, we're talking about like, these step-by-step success things, but like I was realizing that people weren't really understanding even the difference between thoughts and feelings, and I was like changing the conversation to be like, well, what are you actually feeling? Like, forget what you're thinking about. Here I am, a mindset coach. And I'm like, move over, mind, you're in the way. So it was like total evolutionary thing where it was actually where I was like, this is like, we're like bypassing something going on in here of like what I actually want, not what do I want superficially or like what do I want money wise or success wise, but like I love your declaration of the 2 days a week is like that comes from actually just what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like what do you need for you to feel like you're living the life that you want to be living,
Totally.
which has got nothing to do with a step-by-step success program.
It makes me
So
pretty happy.
I went on a
You're
little
spot on, and it's hilarious because most people that have ever been my client are like, I wish I had as much free time as you. How do you do that? And it has very little to do with money. It's a lot to do with deciding that that's something you want, right? And trying it out. And for some people, it might not be the right thing because they need the hustle and bustle and they want to be working 7 days a week and they just love it. And it's that's my point, right? There's no one recipe. And I think we said it earlier, it was kind of, it reminded me of this idea that flow is at the intersection of both discipline and surrender, right? And like when we practice both and we have clear disciplines and routines and practices and, we put in the hours to, learn the words for a language, but then we also surrender. We do, in the language example, we immerse, we go to the place, flow kind of happens somewhere there, right? And so at this intersection of left and right brain or masculine and feminine or the hemispheres, and at those intersections magic happens. And so I think there is an interplay between not knowing at all where you're going and having a little bit of guidance, or just like kids need a little bit of boundaries to be like, okay, well, I can go that far, and then beyond that it's really unsafe, and so I think this, in my experience of, A, being a human, and B, loving this process of becoming and guiding others, it's this process that most people are so afraid of. If you leave the regular square box of applying for the job or following these next steps, or you go to school and then university and then you apply at corporation ABC, well, if you leave this, there might be a risk that you have no fucking clue what to do next. which to me is the feeling of being alive.
I couldn't agree with you more. That space of feeling alive, of being present with yourself, it's so unbelievably rare, wouldn't you say? Like, I was just speaking to a client yesterday who has, in their entire career, they're in their early 50s, has only ever taken 3 weeks off work. And I would share, you've got your 2 days a week, which this is your current practice, your recipe, Julian, and I'm sure you have your recipe, Catherine. I have definitely felt into every few years completely disconnecting and leaving, without really a plan, without a vision. So we're talking about, how do people vision? How do they create their perfect lives? I have systematically, irresponsibly in some people's minds, taken all of those constraints out and gone into the unknown, and also brought my children, which has been such a fascinating experience to be without a plan, really. And it's quite fascinating to feel your body's reaction in this state of presence at first. I don't know if you've ever done this, but for me, it's like a complete exhaustion. It takes me about like a month to feel how tired I really was, or I really am. And then I can come out of that, and the boundless ideas and creativity and just being okay to just be, floats to the surface in a way that I can't access week to week when I'm in a certain rhythm. Like I really need more space. And I realize this isn't for everybody, but I think it is really powerful to leave what you know for a period. I think throughout history, humans have been doing this. They've been going on a pilgrimage, a walk, ceremony, rite of passage. I guess those are my rite of passages, but I wonder if either of you have had a rite of passage in your life that has like really transformed the way you see yourself.
Well, for me, it's not a pilgrimage thing that I was going to answer to. I haven't done that. But I am in a bit of a metamorphosis period right now with my business, which I would say I'm doing right now through my business, which is the program that I have run and adopted, or rather run and adapted since 2017 that I was talking about. I'm closing at the end of this month. And it's been on rolling entry. So it's been nonstop since 2017. There's not been 1 month without me running this program. And I think I'm metaphorically doing what you were talking about right now. And the program that I'm starting up that's new for 2024 is, I'm actually I haven't even talked about it in any way out loud. But I have made a decision that I'm embedding into the agreement that I don't know what it is, and it's going to change as we go. And I'm like actually allowing it to be the fluid thing that is going to respond, instead of me deciding right now in December what they're going to be doing in August. Like, I don't know. And I'm absolutely comfortable with that only being attractive to certain people. And I think that as I'm having this discussion with you, I'm realizing it's really my way of practicing living this way, so that I can stay true to what is needed in the moment, what is real, what we're feeling. Like let it change and morph and have its own life. So that's TBD.
Congratulations. You heard
Oh,
it here.
thanks. But I'll say that I don't feel the freedom and the peace that you're talking about, because it's when you're on the precipice. So is where we're talking to me right now, is like I'm right on the edge. I have one more call this week and then it's closed. And so there's like a death process. There's a forgiveness process. There's letting myself like that pull that we've been talking about this whole time between what I should be doing and then like we were talking about what I'm desiring to be doing, and like, yeah, 2 days a week, like I already don't have meetings before noon. Like I was like carving out all this space all over. And to let me offer a program or an experience for people that doesn't have the, what's the return on the investment? I couldn't say, right? I couldn't tell you, like just, you're just going to have to like follow your intuition or not. I don't know what to tell you. So it feels very like scary and liberating, depending the day or the moment.
This is such a fascinating conversation. I find we're talking about really the process of being a human and being a human in this time and how to liberate from, whatever shackles are holding us back. Because, what's the return of investment, you just asked? Well, linearly in financial terms, for many of us, again, we've talked about it, finances do play a role and they can be important, but it's just such a linear way. And what are all the other returns that you get from not taking meetings before noon? What's the life quality that you get from, having Xing out a Friday in your calendar and making it a long weekend or whatever it might be? And what are these other people in your life? How much more of you do they get when you do that, right? And so all of this is breaking the rules. But I also believe that all of that is fundamentally redefining the human contract or the human social contract. And whoever made up that, that first one is like, screw you. Like I don't want to see more humans being enslaved. I don't want to see more humans being like trying to be something that they're not. And in many ways that's exactly what we're talking about right here today, because we're breaking the rules so we can be, careful buzzword, but more authentically ourselves or more real in the process of being human. And so I think fundamentally the social contract of this world is that we are in dominion over nature, we're in dominion over each other, and therefore humans are reduced to be an industrial production factor. None of that really is that real though anymore. And for anyone tuning into this show, I hope that like you are either done with that or already never onboarded to that, right? And whatever we can kind of co-create in this triangle of a conversation, there are so many pathways out. There are so many moments where ritual or, I hope you asked for rite of passage, can allow us to realize, oh, if I just make one more step, I'm in a complete new reality. And so I'll answer your question. Hope you know my story. There's a lot of them actually over the last, I'm 36 right now, over the last, 20 plus years. But that first one was really when I went abroad as a 15-year-old. Because what happened, I went abroad for a full year from Germany, where I grew up, to Paraguay in South America. And I've shared this story plenty. I wish every teenager can spend some time abroad. What I remember, and I didn't really consciously experience it at the time. I just want to make sure that I say that. Like I wasn't, like that aware as a 15-year-old. But looking back, it's really apparent to me. It was like a rite of passage where for the first time I was myself in the world, outside of my parents' ability to kind of tell me what to do, on another continent, in another language, in another cultural group. And so the mirrors and the reflections I got from society were completely different than the ones I was used to for 14, 15 years. And, after a year, I returned to my home country. And so all of that shook up my perception of reality so much that it couldn't be called something else but a rite of passage. After that, I wasn't the same person anymore. I was so much more connected to like my heart, my core, my understanding of not everyone around me just made this experience, which was very apparent once I got back to Germany. And so I might or might not be able to listen to others. It really depends, right? I need to come back to what I learned in this rite of passage, beyond the grandeur of how cool it sounds and like that I learned Spanish and Portuguese and English, and that's like a fancy trick to pull out of your head when you're still in school and you get better grades and all of that. But that was just a fancy trick. The rite of passage was like, I changed. I suddenly was an adult in a 16-year-old body, right, with a worldview that most adults don't have. And so I will never forget that and the gratitude I have for that family and that journey.
Can I ask you a question?
Both of you can, yeah.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Julian, I was just curious. You said that you had different things reflected back to you there than you did at home. What was reflected back to you there?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, so many things, right? For one, I was in a rural town in northern Paraguay, which is, one of the poorest countries in the world, definitely of South America. And I looked different than everyone, right? I was like the alien kid with blonde hair and blue eyes, and people would stare at me and point their finger at me in the street. And, this is going to sound funny, but that first week I was there, women literally whistled at me in the street. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is weird. And so I could relate to just a whole different box of experiences. But then also people reflected back that like, well, you have it good. You're a rich person from a rich country. And here I was being 15. I had like my first pocket money at like $150 a month that I was allowed to spend. And I was like, what do you mean I'm rich? Like, I don't understand, So it was interesting because since I was at the brink of being a child, being a teenager, turning into an adult, a lot of these judgments or mirrors I got from the people around me, I didn't quite understand them, but they helped me shape my worldview. They helped me shape my next understanding, which I think is fundamentally what a rite of passage is. You don't need to understand what you're going through in order for it to have tremendous effects on what you can do next, right? And so I guess everyone listening to that who's like, well, but I didn't go abroad when I was 15, 16, and it doesn't need to be abroad, just to be clear. You don't have to travel the world for it to work, but do something different right now, this year, next year, whenever it is. Just take a full week and do something that you've never done before. Trust someone. Go on to an experience. Go into nature. Go into the wild. Go on a kayaking trip, whatever it might be. But do something that would usually make you so uncomfortable, because that's another part we talked about here is all of the shit that really matters makes us uncomfortable at some point, at some stage. And, people don't usually talk about that because it's so much nicer to talk about the destination and the result and like, I feel great today. I take 2 days a week off. It's like,
it's also what Catherine was saying about showing all the sides of yourself.
Yeah.
I am a huge proponent of don't just do the different or, share it, really act it out. Don't hold it all inside. I think we need not only for ourselves, but we need to see that humans have this layer, this multi-dimensional aspect of their experience. And I often want to bring in younger generations or younger humans into the conversation. Younger people, kids need to see grown-ups being awkward, uncomfortable, failing, trying things, experimenting. If everything's all so neat and tidy, polished, then when they're getting ready to fail or make a mistake or get uncomfortable or awkward or be themselves, they don't want to. They run for the hills. So then there's yet again more carbon copies being pumped out on the assembly line. Yeah. So I will second your invitation, Julian, and say, do the different, share the different, and like showcase it. Showcase it, please.
Be weird, yeah. I want to add one more thing here, which everyone went through this. Every single person, right? When we're a baby, we don't know how to walk. And then over the process of 6 months to a year, we all learn how to walk. And we take it for granted, right? It's like, yeah, we're two-leggers and two-legged ones and we can walk. And no one really consciously remembers this process. But when you look at a baby learning it, what an agony it is to fall on your face 1,000 times over. What a weird process it is to learn how to walk by failure, by looking around you and being like, oh my God, everyone else walks, but I can't yet, right? But we all go through it. And there's something here that is so fundamental to the experience of being alive, which is, the stuff that's really worth living, it will cost you to grow resilient. It will cost you to just keep trying, to iterate, to try something different, to maybe watch someone be like, this is how they do it. If I watch that person long enough, I will learn how to walk right now, right? And so I'm curious how you two relate to that one, not just the failure part, but this whole process of how uncomfortable we can be as babies, as kids, growing into who we are as adults. And then at some point, people just stop. Why?
Yeah, I can say I love that reminder. And my journey, I do not like to be bad at things. And so I have had to work through the desire to go from wanting to just time and expecting myself to be excellent at it right away. And I have experience in my adult life where that was the case, where I had the result right away. And so it built up a data for me that like I can bypass the learning process. And so it's been a huge part of my own personal journey to like undo that expectation from myself, because it has stopped me from trying things that I want to try because I don't let myself be bad at it, like fall down when I'm trying to walk. An example came to my mind. I just want to share this. It's not quite the same thing, but when I was in university, I grew up downhill skiing. And when I was in university, a boyfriend, we went to Mont Tremblant and we were like, let's go snowboarding. And I had never snowboarded before. And he had taken a lesson and I never had. So we go up to the top of the mountain and I get off the chairlift and I like collapse on the side of the bank in absolute terror, like freeze response. I can't move my feet. Like they're attached to this board. I do not know what I'm doing. There's like a full mountain to go down. And he was trying everything to cheer me on. Like, you got this. I'm here for you. You know, he was being the coach. And I was like, just terrified. And anyway, he ended up getting, needless to say, this did not work out. He got frustrated with me and he skied away and he left me at the top of the hill. And and then I was like so mad. I couldn't believe that he abandoned me. Yeah, this is smoke. Yeah, this is smoke coming out of my ears. So I got up and I just skied down the mountain and I was like, whoosh, 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 whoosh. And he had been waiting halfway down and I just skied right by. And anyway, so I was like, yeah, I'll show you, you know, that type of thing. So there's
that's maybe a motivator for you is when you get that, I'll show you. I know some people who are like, if that gets in the equation, they're like, I will do it. Julian, I could talk, and I'm not going to take over this airwave on talking about the.
Please do.
Well, take over the topic and talk about education, our education system. But I would say that most conventional schools, by way of the way school systems have been designed for generations, is they are essentially assembly lines to fit the greatest number of kids in just efficiencies. And when you have a lot of efficiencies, there's not a whole lot of room to color outside of the boxes, to do things your own way. You know, teachers can be the most amazing teachers and they then have 30 students times 5 classes, or we've all experienced it. We've all probably experienced teachers. I was just talking to you about this, Julian, my singing teacher, who really, he was not a fan of my voice and couldn't wait to tell me, Patterson, he's like, that's enough. Let's move on. Patterson, that's not very good. Let's move on to the other children. So now I'm scared of singing, and I recognize that. It's not a blame thing. It's more like when the system's so tight, when we're kids, we're creative. We are natural born learners. We want to fail. We want to try things out and experiment. And then over years, a lot of that is shaped out of us so that we can be compliant and conform. And I've seen in my own work, exploring the education system and all these innovative people who are like breaking the paradigms open in really creative ways. When you give kids some loose framework, some mentorship, some coaching, but you let their own agency really run wild and their own inner compass continue to thrum from when they're younger all the way through, holy crap, watch out. Those humans are pretty phenomenal. And Julian, you talking about going away at 15. My kids have gone away for a year here, 6 months there. And I see them now, a few years after these expansive experiences, these self-directed experiences, it's settled in them in the way that they see the world. They're very different people, but they have a real grit and resilience and agency that I would love to see, spread. Proud mama, but also on a mission to showcase all of the amazing work being done in the world in education that doesn't look like what maybe the three of us experienced as kids.
Well, I can say as someone who's watching how you have raised your children, you've been like that from the get-go. I mean, you were parenting them where they were humans, not carbon copies, like from the start.
Yeah, they are. And they're very different from each other. But I do see this beautiful trajectory of life. And it doesn't just start when we're in our work life, where all of a sudden, we're in our work existence and we're facing these fears or patterns or limiting beliefs. I do like to go back to the source of so much. And maybe both of you have experienced this working with fellow humans, working with clients, is it doesn't just happen by accident. There is usually a trajectory. There's origins. There are seeds.
Very much so. I mean, as you said, that we could digress for another hour just into education systems and how that can bring out things. And I think this is what coaching, and this is what we said at the beginning of this episode, the economy of care. This is what this is about. We as humans know that we do all need more care to nurture those seeds. And no, you're not done when you're 20. No, you don't learn slower as an adult, only if you believe it. I mean, if you believe it, you do learn slower, but you can still learn, if you're 90. And there's so many people that show that that's actually real, right? And they might be not the norm, and that's okay, but they show that it's possible. And so I think part of coaching, guiding, mentoring, and supporting each other into breaking the rules is that frequency of care, right? That nurturing. I want to ask another question here and kind of jump a little bit. Just, I'm going to context the question too, because you two both are in, Canada as we're recording this. I've lived there for 12 years. Culturally speaking, probably a rather self-prescribed, polite culture. How do you both, but Catherine, you first, how do you both handle difficult conversations? And if it was an Olympic sport, what would be a signature move of handling difficult conversations?
Well, we've had lots of practice in the last few years, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I'm pausing because there's so many different ways that I've tried different things and feeling things out. Well, I'll go to one of the basic premises that I like to operate from, which is like, do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? So like I have disengaged from a lot of difficult conversations, not in a passive aggressive way, or like, I'm not canceling somebody. Like I am absolutely present for conversations of differences. In fact, I have a beef around the whole idea of hanging out with like-minded people. It's like this idea of like, why would we only ever want to hang out with like-minded people? Like, how isn't that part of the problem that we're experiencing right now in society of these polarities? Is because all we're doing is talking to people who think the same way as us. So I think that there's something very important about not like-minded conversations, but not necessarily done from the place of having to convince someone else of your opinion in order for that to be an effective conversation. So that's what I've let go of, is that I don't try to convince anyone of anything. I'm wrong. I usually will ask a lot of questions. So, and not, to me, it's like there's the words and then there's the energy behind how we're communicating. So everything I'm talking about here is about open heart communication. So it's like, I'm feeling you as I'm listening to you, and I'm inquiring as to your view on life, basically, or the difficult conversation, whatever that might be. And I have removed for now, for the most part, a need for me to say mine, unless it's an actual dialogue where I am being asked, like, what do you think? And it's met with the same energy. But so it's not the snapshot answer exactly of like my number one go-to technique, but it is my number one question to make sure that how am I feeling in the conversation? Do I feel good being here right now? And if not, I'm not going to just barrel in and keep going like, let's tussle. I don't need to do that. I'm here for it until I'm not. And even if I'm not, like, you don't need to know why. Like, I don't want to cause conversation. So I just have a lot more compassion and understanding that everyone comes to wherever they think with the information that they have, and everyone's just doing their best. Like, I really try to places so that there's just space for everybody.
I'd love to chime in there. Hope, before I want to pass it to you. I like the wisdom component of what you're sharing, Catherine. I can feel that there is a maturing of the process of when to lean in, when not, right? I can feel that, and it's beautiful how you describe that. Follow-up question. Does that process make you self-censor at times, though, when you should actually speak up?
It does. It does. And that's the part that I'm figuring out right now, because I can recognize that that's part of the problem. So, but you know what? I saw this great quote that I screenshotted yesterday, and I think it's for sharing right now because she says it's so much better than. Can I share this quote with you guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
You have to be mindful of the extent of the truth that you tell people. Too much truth and you lose them. Not enough truth and you coddle them. But the right amount of truth with thoughtful delivery will reveal their blind spot and help them grow. Love is not in hiding or exposing truth to someone, it's in measuring how much truth they need.
Oh, I love that. Who wrote that quote, just so we can quote them?
It's Elika Elbone. I think I'm saying her name. Elika, her name is together without a break. So Elika Lebone, and she's an incredible Iranian activist, and incredible. And she shared that yesterday. I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing to contemplate. So it's like, it's modulation in difficult conversation.
I feel that. And you shared even that sense, which I relate to, coming into a conversation. I feel like there are many ingredients in the mix. I'll just use that food metaphor of what ingredients am I bringing into this energetic soup? What's my mood? What's my need to be right? To check that ingredient.
Yeah, and like, what are you cooking in the first place?
What
because you need to know what you're cooking to know what ingredients to bring.
I
are you trying to get to?
I had a very difficult conversation at Thanksgiving. We did the very typical, let's dive in to the most heated conversation around the family dinner table. And I found myself pulling from my toolkit all over. My kids are watching. My dad is looking absolutely terrified because he hates, if his Olympic move is to completely go silent, Julian. And my mother is leaning into my husband being like, I want to fight. And I was like, wow. So I did one of the moves, which was thinking about the ingredients. And I said, okay, before we dive in, what kinds of outcomes, I'm curious, what kind of outcome do you want? Mom, what outcome do you want? Charlie, what outcome do you want? And my mom was like, I want to fight, basically. So, and Charlie was like, I'm not going to take shit. So he's like, I'm not going to take shit. She's like, I'm going to fight. The kids are watching, going like, whoa, the grown-up's getting really messy. And then grandpa's like, his Olympic move is to like shut down. And I'm trying to pull out like, what's going on in this soup? Anyways, it was a very difficult conversation about current affairs where there wasn't a whole lot of consciousness happening between the two members, and it was a lot of energy that was expended. We ended up actually talking about it after, of like, wow, when you don't go in with any consciousness around where you'd like to land, or how the other person's feeling, you just go driving hard into what you need to protect or what you need to attack. It just felt like all the energy got sucked from the room. So
yeah. You know what I was just thinking as you're describing that? I'm like, oh, whatever happened to the old fashioned debate where like I had this vision of you standing up and being like, all right, Mom, you got 5 minutes. And then Charlie, you got 5 minutes to respond.
I should have done that. And then the kids could ring the bell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I have a question, taking it out of the Olympic sport of difficult conversations to, you have a visual. There are all sorts of mentors and guides that sweep through our lives that impact us. And I'm curious, Catherine, if you have one in particular that has swept through your life and they have left you with a huge, profound impact, lesson, anyone you want to kind of shine a spotlight on.
Oh boy. Well, I'll shed a spotlight on my my heart math teacher, Sheva Carr, and she is the greatest coach I've encountered, and also a phenomenal model for how heart-based living and what it looks like. And she always catches me off guard, and she's always making me like light and laughing about myself with also such deep compassion, and still beyond her years. So she, when you meet someone and you're like, but how is it possible that you would know all of this in these like one lifetime? Like she was a doctor of Chinese medicine. She's like a top person at HeartMath. She is very passionate about polarity, and also is a student of the Kabbalah. And she is wise beyond her years, and it feels to me like she is a gem to find, because she's almost impossible to find. Like she's not like out there on social media and you can just find her and like here she is like in front of her Ferrari. Right? She's not doing that thing that we were talking about before. She's busy living her mission in life, and she is deeply involved in humanitarian aid and bringing HeartMath. Like right now she's working around the clock bringing HeartMath to the Middle East. And like it's incredible what she's doing, and her clients are like for life. Like she's one of the people I was talking about that she works with people until they're complete. So it's not like, you have me for a month and then that's the end of that. It's she's in like deep heart connection for as long as you want to be working with her for. And she's such an incredible model of like boundaries and like self-honoring and honoring of the other. And I mean, um, she's beautiful to watch and to learn from.
Mm.
I'm and she speaks, Julian, you remind me a little bit of her in that when she speaks, it's almost like poetry. And I feel like you have that gift. Things that you were
Thank
saying,
you.
I'm like, God, you just put it.
What a beautiful compliment.
I could never have found the words to say what I was trying to say like you did. And she has the same type of thing when she speaks, it lands in many layers at the same time.
Hmm. What a terrific compliment. Thank you so much, Catherine, for throwing that back at me. I'll throw it back
Oh yeah.
forward at one of my friends and mentors, also someone I would definitely consider both. He's going to be on one of those future series of Breaking the Rules, Hope. That's my friend Swami Chidananda, who is, a Swami in a religious lineage. So walks a very narrow path, actually. If you think of what's allowed and not allowed on the path of a monk and the path of a Swami specifically. And I think one of the reasons why I would highlight him there, and that reminds me kind of what you just shared, Catherine, is I just really enjoy seeing this reflection and this mirror of someone who actually walks a different path than me. Like he's not necessarily going to be the mirror that I'm like, I need to make every choice the way he does it. Quite the opposite. It's like, that's what he does and that's what he's saying. Where do I find myself in that kind of in that in between? So it really challenges me both to expand compassion, listen longer, understand different pathways and also like traditional pathways. And so I love every conversation I have with him for that reason. And I love every time we meet in person for that reason. And it feels like, especially what you said earlier, Catherine, like, why would we only have like-minded friendships and conversations? That's a recipe for disaster, right? And so in the reflection of what he is that I'm not and vice versa, there's a lot of gold for me. And I love that,
Oh, the mining of gold in that mirroring. Well, I will leave you with some golden reflections to think about. We'll time travel a little bit. Are you guys up for some time travel? Yeah. We're not going back in time. We're going forward in time. So my favorite number, which is 88. And we'll start with you. Well, we will start and end with you, Catherine. It's been such a pleasure having you on this round table, the three of us talking about breaking the rules. I wonder if you could share what 88-year-old Catherine would share with you now. What words of wisdom would that
Oh, it's
sweet
making me
older
emotional.
Catherine?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that because that is a framing that I think about that I've been making a lot of my decisions based on, has actually been like, what will I think about what I'm doing? And that was a huge part of my revelation of needing to make this change in my business, was actually like, I asked myself, I'm like, am I living my life's work? Like, is this my best work? And and I was like, no, if it ended today, I would feel incomplete. So, she would say, what was the advice that she would give me? Is that
Yeah,
what
any
you're asking? I
wisdom,
got carried away.
anything from that you'd want to share with you and impart with you right now?
Well, she would definitely be reminding me that nothing really matters. Meaning, not that it doesn't matter, but that she would remind me that I'm in a funny position because I'm the youngest of my siblings. and so is my husband, and we don't have children. And so we sit in this position where whatever mark I leave in the planet is not a legacy, like a family legacy. It's not a like my in the dust. And it's not going to be measurable. It's not going to be like, because of Catherine, such and such a thing happened for very long. I mean, maybe with my, there's a ripple, but she's going to remind me that by the time I'm 88, it's like it's immeasurable and irrelevant. And as a result, that it's really important to continue to live that way, where it's not looking for measurable feedback or just understanding that the impact that I'm making, I'll never know. Like I'll never know. So at 88, it's like it's all ahead and behind. Like, so to remember that while I'm in this period of time where I'm making a difference, to let it be a difference that could ripple, and then I can just enjoy myself at the same time, and just live my life as best as I can.
I love that remembrance. It's like you already know. It's always in there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking.
And Julian, any thoughts? Any last words from you? Maybe you're 80.
Severely love this conversation. I don't know if my 88-year-old is going to chime in at this moment, but I think what Catherine just said there is, really worthy to stand by itself. That, we don't need to measure everything, I think, to understand its full impact. Like, yes, from a data perspective, from a ROI perspective, that makes logical sense. But the existence of who we are and the ripple we send out, this might be so much. I think what I do know is everything is connected and everything is entangled. So therefore, everything matters just as much as it doesn't matter, what you just said. And so there's a real beauty to what you just said there. And I find it is a wonderful way to wrap our conversation. I've had such a great time with the two of you, and I feel like we covered a lot of ground, a lot of stories matched with some insights. And so just thank you is my last word here today.
Thank you both. Looking forward to squishing you in real life.
Whenever that is. I think we go to Tulum.
I'll go to Tulum. Great.
Maybe if people could vote that they want to take 2 of this, and that they require that we're physically in the same place.
Great idea. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you so much for this invitation. This has been such a pleasure, and also it has been so meaningful to me to have a conversation that is like the one that's in my heart, and not the one that I'm seeing everywhere around. And I knew that we were going to have a conversation like that, but I didn't know what it was going to feel like. And I just want to say thank you, because it feels extremely important and affirming. And I really, really hope that the people who watch and listen to this, who need to feel this too, can feel it through our conversation. Yeah.
Well said.